Coco is one of the darkest Disney movies, at least in terms of theme. Like, we're actually going to get cursed. We're going to travel into the afterworld, and we're going to terrify kids with the idea that you don't just die one time, you might actually die 2 times. And we don't know what happens after the second time.
Final death. It's like death will always be a mystery.
The reasoning for the second one is really almost disturbing too, because they're saying, hey, if somebody forgets you for so long, you're going to die a second time. And even that is pretty eerie to me.
Ask about Illuminati, since the charting of Peters. Is it Disney mind control? Is this MK Ultra Deluxe? Occult Disney, we go from real to real. Occult Disney, Bohemian Grove and no more real. Occult Disney, ask about Illuminati. Occult Disney, teach a code to everybody. Occult Disney, the wish upon a star. Occult Disney, you know not to travel far. Oh, Occult Disney, the new brand Pinocchio. Yeah, yeah. Occult Disney, it's a boss overload. Occult Disney, please enjoy the show.
Welcome to Occult Disney, where we have to talk about Occult Disney, the secrets behind the mouse. My name is Matt, and over there's the paranoid American. And joining us today is our guest, Afro. Welcome to Occult.
Oh, it's playing again. What do you know? Stop it.
I thought you were doing an encore.
Yeah, I'm not doing an encore. That's a one-time thing. Yeah. Inside baseball for folks, especially if they're watching me, like not playing the right chords and not moving my mouth. I've done podcasts before where I tried to do like a musical something, and I know Zoom and probably StreamYard too. If you play a music on there, it's like it sounds like absolute garbage. So you have to. So pro tip for any aspiring podcasters or experienced ones out there, doing it in advance, which was 10 minutes ago in my world. So, you move fast, but yeah, here we are. I didn't, the movie because I just did the song, but yeah, it's Coco today. That's what we're looking at. So, Thomas, you want to run that ball a little more?
I hope you die very soon.
Why, thank you.
You know what I mean, in a good way. In a good way. Also, we gotta do a quick intro because we got a special guest today. I'm gonna do my best, but this is Afro. All flows reach out. He's a rapper, actor, producer. I would say legend in the making because he's worked with some of the all-time hip-hop legends on the planet: Marco Polo, Pharoah Monch, already the Rugged Man, DJ Premier, Gifted Gab, R.I.P. He was on Jimmy Fallon dropping some, I guess, real-time freestyles. He's been in a horror movie called Bitch Ass. And then he's also got a really good movie review series called Frotizzle Reviews, where he gave, I think, Ernest Scared Straight a 10 out of 10. So we're homies for life just because I already know we're on the same level. But welcome to Occult Disney, man. Thank you so much for joining us for this one. Oh, your mic.
Sorry about that. Thank you, guys. Thank you, fellas, for having me on the channel.
I mean, and when I was talking to you originally, I mentioned that I had this Occult Disney show, and I had a list of movies that we already had lined up, and you immediately snatched on to Coco, and you were like, "That's my favorite Disney movie." So, is that true, or
and it's my favorite Disney film or Pixar film in the past? I would say 15 years.
If we went before 15 years, and you're not allowed to pick Coco, what would be like your other top picks?
Maybe Monsters Inc.
Okay, I think these are all good ones.
Yeah, it might be a tie between Monsters Inc. or Finding Nemo, but I'm gonna probably lean just a little bit more so to Monsters Inc. Yeah.
What if we go 2D?
Go who?
What if we go 2D? Like no 3D, no Pixar, like classic.
Out of the OGs, I would say man, that's a good one because I don't know. I migrated more so towards the Pixar films, but the OGs, well, I gotta say, the classic ones like Snow White and I don't know. I don't have a favorite 2D one. Yeah.
I think you named my favorite, which is Snow White, which is about as OG Disney as you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the greater ones, I would say.
I think I'm going with my Lilo and Stitch at this point, which is interesting because on our audio version of this podcast, it is the most listened to episode, and I have no idea why. I guess even like a year ago, like long before like the live action one came out, like that was already like people seem to gravitate towards that movie.
Well, I love that one. That's one of my favorites as well. The 2002 version. I just think the cast is great. It's really wholesome. It's a really it's nostalgic for me too. I'm a little bit younger. I'm 27, so I really grew up with it while I was younger, and that was one of my first introductions. So, but Lilo and Stitch always stuck with me. I always thought it was just not only hilarious but really heartfelt as well. Yeah, one of my favorites.
I mean, on theme with like Occult Disney and Conspiracy, that was when we reviewed it. We were talking. That's the first Disney movie that acknowledges the presence of a CIA and like a shadow government in a very direct way. You don't got to read between the lines. They actually mention it right in the movie.
Right.
Yeah, so Coco, I find it a little interesting. You're coming in with it as your favorite, which I get that. However, I first saw this maybe a year after it came out. And I should mention to listeners, we're jumping our timeline a lot because hey, if someone wants to come on and talk about something, we can jump a few movies. So we are skipping several Pixars for people playing the home game. But yeah, I first saw Coco probably not in the theater. I don't see any of these in the theater because they're only in Japanese and the Japanese theaters. So I saw a year later. I liked it. I did it for a podcast last year, and I thought it was really good, but it annoyed me. And last night watching it, and we'll get into reasons, it was kind of making me angry.
What?
Oh, wow. How so?
Be angry. And again, is it well made? For sure. But there's things in here that do not sit well in the deeper recesses of my being, which I guess we'll get into more later. But
okay, all right. I'm excited about that. Actually,
I'm definitely not like, oh, it's your favorite. How could you do that? I'm not nothing like that, man. I'm just like it doesn't sit with me for like metaphysical reasons.
Okay,
yeah, I mean that's no problem if it doesn't gel with how if it just doesn't gel with you, that's no problem at all. Yeah,
it did the first time, and each time I watch it, it gels less, which I find kind of fascinating. So maybe we'll all get into that.
Toy Story, man. Like every time I see Toy Story, I like it a little bit less for some reasons, and I like a little bit more for some reasons.
Are you talking 3 specifically?
I think 3 did such a doozy on me that it's affecting 2 and 1. Like it's splashing back into the past a little bit.
Okay, this might be my Toy Story 3 with Coco. And with Toy Story 3, I could understand you knew it was a good movie and well made and all that, but there's something in the sauce, is a little rotten for some of us, I guess.
Well, let me do the really quick spoiler overview of what happens in the movie, and you guys can fill in anything that I miss. It's obvious, but Coco's about this kid Miguel that grows up in a family that has banned music because the great-great-grandpa way back in the day went off to become a famous musician and never came back. And the rest of the family holds that against great-great-grandpa, no music. Everyone's got to make shoes for the rest of their lives. This kid goes to steal the grandpa's guitar. He ends up getting cursed on Day of the Dead. He has to go into the underworld and then figure out a way to get back into the real world again. And all along, he's kind of like meeting some other dead people. He kind of uncovers this huge murder mystery. But that's essentially the premise of the movie. And I guess the biggest spoiler alert is that he's allowed to play music at the end. I hope that doesn't surprise anyone in a Disney movie that they're allowed to have
a famous song.
Yeah, there's music and songs. I know there's a few little points that we're going to get into, but I think that's kind of the summary of the movie.
Songs are good. I mean, I learned remembering it last year because it was funny. We did the podcast, and then I had a new coworker from Mexico, and I'm talking to him, and somehow I said, "Oh, I just did the Coco podcast," and these kids were like, "Oh, you're Mexican." They just started singing a song, and then the kids, 10-year-olds, made me learn to play the song on the spot because I had my guitar at work that day. So So I am a guy who has a guitar at work too. That another reason maybe this movie doesn't sit with me. I'm a guy that like today I'm taking a guitar to work and it's 90 something degrees maybe. Again, we talked about how I forgot. I know Fahrenheit, I know Celsius, but I can't square the circle, you know.
Yeah. The
hotter in hell I'm taking a guitar. So sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I think what really resonated me with the film is that as someone I'm half Mexican and I grew up in a Spanish speaking household. So it gelled with me a bit more personally, seeing that a lot of the characters in this film really reminded me of my uncles and my relatives and, you know, my aunts and my tias and tios. So it felt really, it was one of the first Pixar films where I felt like I can look at the characters and be like, wow, these can be some of my family members. And as much as I enjoy Toy Story and Monsters, Inc., and there's some of my big mega favorites, I don't get that feeling from that. So that's why I felt like Coco was one of the more special ones for me in the past like decade or so.
Did you celebrate Day of the Dead growing up?
No, me personally, no, but we would go to Mexico and Tijuana a couple times here and there where they would be celebrating it. So I do remember being young and walking down the streets and seeing some of the parades and some of the celebrations for it. So I do remember the face paint and the music, and yeah, I can remember. I remember it as easy when I was around 8 or 9 years old. Yeah, so I got to experience some of that.
If you're 8 or 9 years old and you see a bunch of people out in the streets dressed up as skeletons and dancing, like, what do you think right away? Did it freak you out at all originally, or was it something cool?
At 5 years old, I was already watching Training Day with Denzel. I was already watching Scary Movie 1 was one of the very first movies I ever saw. Scream 1 as well. I was already watching all that before the age of 8 or 9. So when I seen the skeletons in the streets, that was nothing.
Little faces of death here and there, yeah.
Rotting corpses, zombies on the streets seems fine.
But it's also a culture inherit, you know, it's a culture thing.
I do want to throw one thing out. I mentioned I did a podcast last year, and our guest was she was a Mexican animator who had moved to Japan and like animates anime. And one of her things was she felt like Miguel was not a Mexican boy. He was an American boy, and that sat weird with her. I thought that was kind of interesting. And well, I guess in your case, because you're South Cali and then you're visiting sometimes, and she's like, there's no family in Mexico that would ban music, which they do say in the movie, like this is the one family that did it. You know, they do mention it's like a weird thing. So, but that kind of sat with me where she felt, and so I'm just curious how you feel about that, like Miguel being more American than like Mexican.
I don't know. Me personally, I didn't get that too much of that vibe because of the root of the family that Miguel is surrounded by. I mean, it really rang really reminiscent of how my grandma would be pretty strict on certain things. Not so music, but there are definitely other things where I can hear the grandma in this film, how she's yelling at Miguel like that. That's extremely similar to how my grandma would yell. And I just didn't get the American sense from Miguel, you know, from my personal experience.
No, I was just curious because you said the family was legit, right? Like everyone around him seemed like
family.
I think
it's pretty on the nose, especially the relatives around Miguel in the film.
Have you ever been hit with chanclas?
Me, no, but I got my ear pulled. I've gotten my ass whooped a couple times. So,
Matt, you ever been hit with a sandal before?
Sandal? Not that I can remember.
I'm trying to think of things I've been hit with in general. Usually just, things falling on my head and stuff.
Okay.
So
Isaac Newton over here.
That's right. No, I remember the only time I've been in a proper fist fight was actually I was like 13 or 14 years old and I was a Boy Scout, and I'm standing in the patrol room with a kid, and we're both like, we've never been in a fist fight. Let's try having a fist fight. So it was like a gleeful, fun fist fight. Although we were punching each other. So I mean, that's what 13-year-olds do, right?
No, that's what friends. Yeah, that's what good friends do, especially around that time. Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of the things that I think was missing from this movie a little bit, is that it doesn't seem like Miguel has any friends outside of his family and outside of his dog. So when he goes into this afterlife, pretty much everyone he meets is a potential friend, and they kind of become that way. And I thought that it
Your
stood out to
guitars
me
are your
because they don't
friends.
emphasize it. Well, I get, yeah, music is his only friend in this case.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. They painted him more so minus the dog. Well, he does feel like an outcast as well. He's the only one really in the family that wants to play the music like in the real world, and they keep telling him that he can't. So he does feel really blocked up and really barricaded. And I can, there's that voice where he says when she smashes the guitar to grandma and that's his last straw, and then he starts running for it. I can feel that frustration with him, and it really made me feel like he was alone in that sense.
Yeah, that scene in Animal House where they smash the guitar at the party, that always leaves me feeling a little raw.
I think it's an interesting moment in this movie, though. First of all, to be told that you're not allowed to listen or play music to Miguel, and Miguel's going to be the protagonist. So this is the eyes of the character that you're going to be living through for the most of it. So then every time we hear music in this movie, you kind of feel like you're doing something wrong, or that like you need to keep it secret. It's this forbidden taboo, which is completely different from any other Disney movie I think we've seen so far. That at no point is someone like, you're not allowed to play music, and then we just see them play music and we're hearing music the entire time.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I agree with that.
So I usually get into a little bit of the production, how this film came to be. And it actually, this is a direct line from Toy Story 3 to Coco. Lee Unkrich, I don't even know how to say his name. Unkrich? Okay, anyway, he directed Toy Story 3. And after that started developing Coco, which originally was going to be an American child learning about his Mexican heritage and this happening. And at some point, they decided to actually move the story, which is smart. The weird thing is, it is like a bunch of like white dudes in California trying to crack this formula for the most part. So they did get at least Hispanic blood voice cast to do it. Some of them do the Spanish version voices and the English, so you get the same actor in both language versions. So that's kind of cool. The only non Hispanic blood voice actors, they have to put John Ratzenberger in because he's in every movie, so they give him one word. I think he says stop in here somewhere. Actually, I don't even remember what word he says, but it was like, they had to give that little thing out. But he plays
the dentist who puts his picture on an ofrenda, so he plays the small role as a dentist. John
Ratzenberger. There we go. Yeah, so you got to give him his little bit, but it's that movie pairing thing where sometimes you want to go with the underdog. I love Armageddon, but I'm like, hey, we should watch Deep Impact too. Ants and A Bug Life, both of them are kind of not. We didn't have a good time revisiting A Bug's Life. And I think we'd have a worse time revisiting Ants probably. Where is I going with this? Oh yeah, the other movie this year is The Book of Life, an animated film made in Mexico by Mexicans.
I heard that one was great. I didn't get to see it.
It's kind of better than this one. That's one of the things against Coco. Gotcha. This is the Pixar crowd, like, trying to, let's learn. I mean, it's cool that they're like, let's try and authentically learn this culture. They hired a few like token people, but it's still the Pixar people making this, right? So where The Book of Life does feel a little more authentic. It's got a little more artistry to it. It is kind of a better movie. So, the one that always pisses me off, and I've mentioned on the podcast before, is Despicable Me with the Minions and Megamind, and I was always on Team Megamind, still am. Although the recent Megamind looks like it's garbage, so just that first movie. But yeah, that I guess that's not even the thing that like bugs me. That's the metaphysics. We're going to get into more on that. But I am like, hey, there's this movie made the same year, which is kind of like more legit. Is that too hipster of me? I don't know.
I'm glad that I haven't seen the other one that you're talking about, so I got to go into this one a little fresh. But I'm going to have to watch that one so we can talk about it later.
Well, to be fair, I remember seeing the poster when it came out, and the poster even looked almost identical to Coco. So I definitely got that feeling of how I can see the similarities, or how, maybe even the look of the marketing too. I remember catching, like, I went into the living room, and my niece and nephew, they're younger. They're about 5 and 2 years old, and they were watching Book of Life like not that long ago. I remember Ice Cube's playing like the big giant God figure or something like that. And I remember seeing like 1 second of it and thinking, wow, this kind of has a Coco feeling. But I wasn't sure which one had came out first, or that's why I was a bit oblivious to the movie, but I kind of knew some stuff about it, you know, and I still got to watch it fully. But yeah, I can see how the similarity, or even the look of the film, or just the appearance of the film, or the feeling of it can be similar to each other.
Actually, the Book of Life does predate Coco by a couple years.
Oh, wow.
Oh my, is Coco doing the same thing that De La Cruz did? Yeah, October 17th.
There's a trend, right? There's a trend where there'll be a Disney movie and then a competing movie release in a very similar time frame, and sometimes it's someone trying to tank Disney, and in this case, maybe it's Disney trying to ride the coattails a little bit.
Now, Book of Life, with a 3-year difference, did have plenty of time to do its thing.
Wow.
Budget 50, box office 100. So I don't. Once you consider marketing, I guess you make like $5 on that. I mean, Coco, we're looking at a 200 million budget, and then 814 million. It's making 4 times. So it was by far the more successful movie. But so, go ahead.
I definitely, I can definitely see that, because they do it all the time. Whether it's the music industry or the film industry, they're going to definitely take ideas. They do it all the time, every single day. And I mean, this is a little bit different because there's so many adaptations of it, but it kind of reminds me of how Del Toro makes Pinocchio, and then Robert Zemeckis' Disney makes Pinocchio like not that long after, and then the Robert Zemeckis one was 1,000 times worse. So I can see if I'm correct, I think Del Toro released his first and the Zemeckis one. And
they're real close, but you might be right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can see them trying to watch the Del Toro one and being like, oh, let's see what we can do, blah, 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 blah. And then, yeah. So I see whatever industry, even the music industry, there'll be the big wigs or the big guys that listen to the underground people who are just scraping by, or they have a really close-knit team. And then they get their ideas snatched, all because of the big wig. So that does happen that happens actually a lot.
I love imagining there's like a conversation where Zemeckis is like, we're going to get Tom Hanks, and hear me out, we're going to have him just phone it in. It'll be the first time ever, right?
Yeah, he was definitely on autopilot with a heavy, awful accent for sure.
You could have like an all Pinocchio podcast, really. You just do every version of Pinocchio, because for some reason everybody wants to do it. Robert Downey Jr. for a long time wanted to do some kind of Pinocchio. Yeah, there's a Roberto Benigni one, which is that'll burn your eyes if you watch it. There's that weird animated one from the early 90s. Yeah.
I always have to point out too Pinocchio's Revenge, which is a really horror movie.
It's so bad, it's awful, but I love it.
Yeah.
I love it because it's so bad. I can watch that one and just have fun tearing it to shreds.
I rented that one when it first came out from like the video store, so I put money into it. Like I had to sit down and force myself to enjoy it, but I did.
What's funny is one of my lady, one of her best friends was in the film as one of the kids, and I believe in the intro, but my lady's friend is in that film.
In Pinocchio's Revenge?
When she was a kid, man. Yeah.
Oh, little Blood and Honey update, since we're on dark versions of Disney stuff. Little Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. So my daughter's school has like a really elaborate school festival, right? Where like they turn the classrooms, like they'll try and like turn them into theme park rides and stuff. I mean, it's, like cardboard and balloons and stuff. But last year we did the fake Pooh's honey hunt at my daughter's school. This year they still had that. It was different inside because it's a different class, but 2 hallways down they had Pooh's dark honey hunt. So someone decided to do the horror version of that as their class thing. It was crowded and hot. We only had time for one thing. So we went to the Wreck-It Ralph room because my daughter said that was the most fun one. So we're doing that movie soon. So it made sense. But yeah, I just thought it's funny that even the high school is like, let's also do the dark version of Pooh along with, they have both versions of Pooh. You can choose your Pooh.
That's awesome. Because if I was a kid, I don't know. I would go for both, but the horror one would sound pretty fun because I was already a psycho kid watching horror films at around that age, So I would definitely be like, hey, what's going on there?
I would have gravitated to that one, but my wife's scared of everything. So if it looks slightly scary, even at a high school festivals, like I have 3 students that were doing like a Squid Game room, right? And she didn't want to do the Squid Game room. Look, I have students there. Yeah, they did. Except my students saying Ika Game. I'm like, Ika Game? Oh, Squid Game, because Ika is squid in Japanese. It took me a minute to work that out. So
I think we found another good sort of litmus test question. It's do you like light poo or dark poo better? And I think that I probably like light poo better than dark poo, just because I haven't seen the second one yet, but the first one, it was kind of like they just sold the idea more than the movie itself. And there's another one called Screamboat. Have you heard of Screamboat?
Ooh, Screamboat.
I've seen the trailer. I haven't seen the movie yet.
So it's with
David Thornton, right? David Howard Thornton's in there, right?
I don't even know. I just found out that it is David Howard Thornton.
Yeah, he's in that.
Amy Schumacher. Yeah. So I'm actually excited about all these new dark Disney movies coming out, and I guess
there's a new Popeye the Slayer Man coming out. I'm excited for that one. I really hope they do that one pretty fun because he's Popeye. I want to see Popeye kicking ass and just decapitating people as Popeye, But I
like this trend.
I felt the same way with your Winnie the Pooh, the first one. I felt the idea was way better than I wanted to enjoy it as a terrible movie and have fun, but even then, I thought it wasn't fun. I got to see the second one as well.
Still like the suits from that one. I'll throw that out there.
That was the only part. That was like,
that was the only part.
Yeah.
I like the suits.
The suits were better than the kills.
I can tie this back to Coco because I do think that Coco is one of the darkest Disney movies, at least in terms of theme. Like, we're actually going to get cursed. We're going to travel into the afterworld, and we're going to terrify kids with the idea that you don't just die one time, you might actually die 2 times, and we don't know what happens after the second time.
Final death. It's like death will always be a mystery.
The reasoning for the second one is really almost disturbing too, because they're saying, hey, if somebody forgets you for so long, you're going to die a second time. And even that is pretty eerie to me. So I've always thought that was, it would always give me chills in a weird way. I'm like, that is crazy,
And it depends on a photograph.
Yeah. What happened?
It depends on a photograph. People have to take a photograph. So, hey, let's look at Japan again, 2011. If you're, the tsunami and quake thing, right? That wiped away entire town. So if going by the theology of this movie, all of those people instantly died their final deaths,
Yeah.
I had that exact same thought when this was playing out, because I was like, man, photographs haven't been around that long, and they clearly state that even if you write music and everyone falls in love with your music, that wouldn't be enough to keep you from dying your second death. So before photographs, was it based on paintings? And what if the painter got your likeness wrong? Does that mean that you're screwed too? Or does like your dead version start morphing into the weird, like the lady that like updated the Jesus picture, right? And like completely changed it. Like, would doing something like that with the family portrait also cause the second
Monkey
death?
Jesus, Monkey Christ, put the name out correctly.
Okay, that's what we call. But I mean, it really like rose an interesting dilemma for me, where like, do I need to just take a lot of pictures? Does that mean that someone that's had a lot of pictures taken of them, like a model or something, they're going to outlive all of us because people are going to remember them, even if it's not by name, but just by their photo?
And by coincidence.
And another thing too is that for how long the Afterlife has been working, I wouldn't be surprised if everybody in the beginning of time has died twice, because photographs are, like you said, relatively newer. So that's
maybe get a real heaven. This could just be purgatory. I mean, they don't say it's heaven anyway. They say it's the land of the dead, right? So,
so there's a lot of parallels here, because I mean, I was raised Roman Catholic and I didn't celebrate Day of the Dead. The first time I saw it, it was kind of a little bit, it took me back a little bit. I couldn't believe that a culture would celebrate death in this way, because we like to put them in the ground and put like a door over them and bury them and just not think about it. Right, and really, they're like a guardian angel now. But I would never think of my guardian angel as decaying and having skeleton bones and stuff. It's like the exact thought. Now, I guess if you go back to certain like Roman Catholic churches, they like preserve like the skulls and the femurs and all this stuff, but that's usually venerated for saints and because they see their remains as these holy objects. But for just, grandma and grandpa, to imagine them as skeletons is a little bit creepy.
Yeah, no doubt. It is very eerie. Even even if I can understand both sides. I can understand the heritage side of it, but I can understand if people get freaked out by it, you know, and definitely it's an eerie sight with the makeup and the skeletons and the death theme overall, you know.
And you stay the age you are. So Coco gets the pleasure of being a skeleton that is 100 years plus old. You know, she's still going around as a very elderly skeleton. I hope her bones don't crack like a 100 plus year old person. But
yeah,
No,
that is
up.
a strange choice. That is a strange choice, because usually when we see films like kind of regarding this kind of theme, if somebody dies, they go back to heaven, or they go back in the form of when they were more younger, or they had more life to them. So it is a strange choice to have everybody die and then come back at the age that they died. Yeah.
Star Wars went back on that decision, right? Darth Vader becomes a Hayden Christensen ghost if you watch the later ones.
I gotta say too, there's some really clear DNA between Toy Story 3 and Coco, and I didn't know that they basically went directly from Toy Story 3 to this movie, because just like Toy Story 3, Coco ups the ante a little bit, and I would declare it the most emotionally manipulative Disney movie of all time, because not just of the second death thing, not just because music is banned and it's taboo to listen to, not just because Miguel is kind of a loner and doesn't have any actual friends, but they also start playing with the concept of dementia, and that your relatives, you can watch them slowly decay and die. It almost feels like there's 3 deaths, right? The first death is Mama Coco losing her mind and not recognizing her family. The second death is like, you know, regular material death. And then that third death is you fading away from everyone's memory. And they tie this in a really interesting and deep way, but they tie the dementia of Mama Coco, the great grandma, of her forgetting her dad. And that's going to be the cause of his second death in this afterlife. And I mean, I can't think of a single other Disney movie that treated actual mental illness like dementia in such a serious way. Almost all the other times, it's like, oh yeah, I've got a drunk uncle, but he's flying with the kids blowing bubbles or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I was just saying, we're gonna have to do a little reverse engineering, because different filmmakers. I mean, still Pixar, different filmmakers. I feel like Inside Out is a interesting in between Toy Story 3 and this one, because I like, well, we'll see when I watch it again what I think. I feel like I like Inside Out like a lot, just like, hey, this is a fun movie. But that and this are kind of the worst offenders. And Monsters Inc., which I agree with you. I love that movie, but it's the Pixar bureaucracy. I mean, it's in Toy Story too. You know, got the structure to the toys. Monsters Inc. has the company, and there's always, and now in Coco, that the fact that we're putting it to the afterlife kind of drives me insane. I think I like to think, you know, I've had lucid dreams. I like to think, you know, there's things beyond that are way beyond just material crap, like a TSA check-in counter, you know?
I can understand if you think it's like a bit, it's dark, if it's a bit cynical, or if it's a bit like, almost like there's no light at the end of the tunnel feeling, you know, it's like a very, I don't know the word right now, but it comes
realistic.
Yeah, I can see if you, yeah.
Like another movie, it has the afterlife, which I would say is also very bureaucratic, but is doing it for kind of comedic effect. Maybe that's one thing. If Coco's a little more sarcastic about it, but it's very earnest about this bureaucracy, right? The sarcasm is basically De La Cruz and his usurping of Hector's songs and all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, defending your life, it's like he dies and he's like, he goes to, like, everyone's in white robes and they're in like an office park where he goes and sits and they review things from his life and, you know, decides if he's an a-hole or not. And that movie's snarky. So in that case, the bureaucracy is real funny, right? In this one, though, it's kind of like, no, this is just how things are, you know?
That's actually a good point, that this movie lacks the same sort of sarcasm that a lot of other Disney movies have, usually some kind of sidekick. And in this one, the sidekick kind of changes a little bit. First it becomes Hector, and then it kind of becomes the dog, and the dog doesn't really have any dialogue. It's one of the few Disney animals that doesn't talk. But it also ends up being kind of like the savior at the very end, which I think is appropriate when you get into the mythology that we'll touch on in a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. I would say, and what's funny is the I think what I really liked, the first time I watched this movie, maybe it was because I was a bit younger. I got to see this in the theater. I think the switch from Hector being the kind of goofy, funny sidekick into really going to more serious territory when he's discovered that he's the great grandfather, that surprised me at first. I didn't expect that switch. I thought Hector was just going to be that goofy character, and he turns out to be one of the more tragic characters with how he died and with how De La Cruz stabs him in the back and steals his song. And that I always thought that affected me pretty well in the film.
I think
that's
it's
disturbing.
deep,
that happens. Yeah, it's disturbing. That's happening, in the also in the great beyond. It's like, shouldn't the great beyond be, we'd like, hell, it could be right, but we'd like to think that things are more like, impartial and set. Good person gets good things. The bad person works harder. That's kind of like what I like to think of as like. Notice I didn't say punish, right? You work harder at being not terrible.
I think there's like economies in the afterlife in this one, at least implied.
TV cameras,
electrical supplies. Like there's probably commercials playing in some of that. So I like part of that. There's also, I guess, one part that's like unsettling to me is how fragile they portray some of this. And I don't know how the actual rules work, but I was looking up some online just to see if some of my questions had any merit to them. For example, at the beginning of this, Miguel, as he's running through these ofrendas and he's trying to like steal this guitar, there's a certain point, I think, where he takes food off of one of these plates. It's being offered to someone's dead ancestors, and he throws it to kind of keep a dog away or something. He uses it as a distraction.
Yeah.
And they later imply that the ofrenda is supposed to be your family puts out your favorite foods and a picture, and like, this is to honor you. And that if they don't honor you properly, and this is outside the context of the movie, but if you don't honor your dead relatives properly on this day, then it can make them upset and it can cause problems for you. And I was wondering, as soon as he threw that turkey leg, like, did someone's like grandma is like, they're gone now? He just killed someone's grandma, the second death, because he threw this turkey leg, and that was like her favorite thing.
Did he damage the photo?
He causes a lot of different problems like this that we don't care, because it's about Miguel and Miguel figuring out music and Miguel finding his family heritage, but he might have just ruined like 2 or 3 other people's heritage on his like weird path here.
No, it's a great point. I didn't even think about that like that. It's a great point.
Is that what cursed him? I was just going to say that's also the Disney ride, the Tower of Terror in Japan. That's the story, because I actually went to get this guy. That's the Chikiri Ontondu. And the story of there's Mickey Mouse falling through the Tower of Terror. So the story of the Tokyo Tower of Terror is that this rich industrialist from the turn of the century went and stole cultural items from many different indigenous people. So there's paintings of him and his manservant like taking like moai statues with like the natives chasing him, that sort of thing. So it's like New Year's 1900, he puts his cigar out on that idol, and the idol curses him and makes him fall and go through space and time and dimensions on the elevator. So I'm like, did Miguel kind of do that when he defiled this shrine a little bit?
Maybe they're understanding. I don't. But they do explain the rules of magic in this movie, which I appreciate, because again, in most Disney movies, they kind of just leave it up to you to figure out what the physics are. And in this one, they say that he was cursed because this is the day that you're supposed to offer things to the dead. And he did the exact opposite. He stole something from the dead. And that was the reason that he gets cursed to begin with.
So be careful with shrines and idols, I guess. Yeah.
Any other day, like if he had stolen something from a mausoleum the day after, is that cool? Is it just this one day that you're not supposed to be a grave robber?
We actually pretty much do have this holiday in Japan. It's completely different, of course, but it's the same idea. It's Obon, which will be actually in 1 month. It's early August. So at that point, you take the family shrine, you take everything out of it, you put it on a table in like one of the tatami rooms, close the shrine up, and they make like animals, like cucumber animals, and they stick pencils in to make them into dogs and stuff. And the idea is you burn a bunch of straw out, and for 3 days, the ghosts of your relatives are going to come back to the house for those 3 days while the shrine is out. So you welcome them in by burning a bunch of straw. They're there for 3 days. You leave the shrine right out there. So it's like, hey, you can hang out in the living room. You visit the grave, which theoretically is close to the house. And then after 3 days, you put everything away. Light some fireworks.
Or else what?
I don't really think there's an or else. There's probably, if you live in Tokyo, it's very likely you're not doing full Obon. But back when we did Summer Wars was Obon, or it was like right before Obon, I think. So that's why the family was gathering.
They put the ice cubes on grandma.
Right. So grandma would have come back immediately in that movie because they were inviting the dead relatives back.
Well, and I looked up too. There's Obon in Japan. There's almost any culture or country you can think of has something similar to a Day of the Dead, even if it doesn't fall in the same time period. There's one called Pichu Pashka in India. There's one called the Jingming Festival in China, Radanista in Russia. So they've Gai Jatra in Nepal. These are all different versions of honoring, and I think even Catholics have like the All Saints Day, which aligns the same exact days as this Day of the Dead, and they have like the same premise where you're honoring your dead relatives and you're making offerings and just keeping them in your mind to kind of keep them alive. But I'm also wondering, in the paranormal realm, usually someone enticing you to stay in the material realm is a bad thing because you're getting trapped between worlds and you're not moving on to the next thing. So I wonder, is dying the second death in Coco context, isn't that something that you technically want to do? Because it's inevitable. They even say in this movie that no matter what, everyone's going to eventually die their second death.
Are they Archon trapped in this place? It is false heaven, I guess, because it's shiny. They make the afterlife way more colorful in this. Of course, I got the bridges go to what? You get to hang out with your family if you cross the bridge. You're still not going to like another afterlife. That confused me a little bit, I guess, between the first and the second viewing. So yeah, the second death is very mysterious. This is just like an illusion. This is an Archon holding pen, in Coco.
Is purgatory? Do you go over the little daffodil bridge or where they're marigolds? There's a very specific flower petal that I guess is linked to this particular celebration, and they use this as the token inside of this kind of like weird death simulation, that as long as you can get this magical token given to you and blessed by your ancestors, then it kind of turns into like a golden ticket where you can jump between the two worlds.
But that's our Earth plane in this whatever Coco's world is. That final death is that, like they say, nobody knows, which is just like, it's kind of here where like no one knows what happens when you die. Well, in Coco, they know what happens when you die, but they don't know what happens when you die again. It's not. It's a Russian nesting doll thing.
What if you want to move on? What if you want your second death? You're like, I've been here for a minute. Like, I've got paintings of me going back thousands of years. I'm ready to go to the next step. And you're kind of trapped there based on how many people remember you in this other material world. That almost sounds like that could be like a horror movie in terms of the dead person that's ready to move on. Like, you're forcing them to be a ghost by remembering them.
How long are JFK, Marilyn Monroe, and John Lennon going to have to hang out in this place?
And they keep thinking of JFK with like the hole in his head. So like he's got like the hole in his head in the afterlife. And
Yeah,
he's
it's
like,
a skull though, at least. It's not gory, right?
It's but a flesh wound.
You get used to your skull person. You're going to be living that way a whole lot longer than you were on Earth if you made any impact in the world. So you should be an asshole, right? That way you people forget about you faster and you move on.
I'm probably gonna butcher this word, but they have these animal companions. What the hell do they call them? A familiar, I guess. In like Harry Potter world, they'd be your familiars. So when you go into
spirit
the
animal,
world, you have spirit animal. They call them
alabrijes. Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
I was not going to get that out.
Yeah, I barely got there, and I think it's cool because I've never been raised in a way that I'm gonna get a cool flying dog after I die. This is actually something cool to look forward to, and they're gonna be neon colored. Like, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. If you told me I had a neon colored dog waiting for me in the afterlife, like I'm ready to go now.
And what's cool is that it's a hybrid. It has like the head, torso, and paws of a jaguar, the horns of a ram, the wings and hind legs of an eagle, and the tail of an iguana.
Well, that's the family, I guess, like Coco's or like the mom's. That's her spirit animal. And then we see at the end, right before Miguel almost dies and then doesn't, his dog becomes a full-fledged. He becomes the exact same thing. And I wonder, does he get back into the normal world and he still has some of his Alebrije like powers and abilities, or they just wait? Because it's a slow transition. He doesn't immediately become a spirit animal once they go into the spirit realm. It only happens right before, I think, sunrise, which kind of has that Disney Cinderella glass slipper feel to it. And that's when he kind of does this conversion. And that particular dog breed starts with an X. I'm trying to remember what it was called.
I had it on my screen a second ago. I can do that for you. Zolo. I
don't know how to say it either.
Okay. It sounded like you're doing better than I was. I started saying it was like, oh my God, I'm in too deep.
Jolo Chiquente. I think that might be how you say it. Let's see. I don't know how the fuck you say it.
Hey, here's an anachronism. Alebrije, if I said it right, was the art form originated in Mexican City in the 1930s when Pedro Linares, a paper mache artist, began creating surreal dreamlike creatures. So actually, Coco wouldn't have had this going on because that was before 1930s when she was a kid. I guess she could
magic. A little bit of Disney magic can always smooth over those rough bumps. And I'm gonna try myself too. Xoloitzcuintli, and it's named after an Aztec god, I believe, of death, lightning, and deformities called Xolotl. And the name of this dog literally translates to dog of the god or god dog.
Oh wow!
Which I feel that's magic in itself. That it's like, because dog is the inversion of God and dog. So this is the dog god. And based on the actual beliefs of those Aztecs, that you could only get to the afterlife if you had one of these dogs with you. And in many cases, they would bury the dog, sometimes alive, when its owner died, so that when the owner had to go over this bridge, it would be accepted because it had this dog with them. And just to make it a little bit more difficult, the dog had to have never experienced abuse in its life. If it was an abused dog, or if it wasn't sort of taken care of well, then it could not fulfill its purpose in transporting you over into the afterlife. Which I wonder, like, if you bury a dog alive, isn't that technically abuse? Like, doesn't that kind of kill?
Yeah, that doesn't. That's
special rules. I think.
A little bit of a paradox there. Yeah, you just had me in. That popped in my mind, of course, when Mr. Burns on The Simpsons is talking about when he dies, he'll take Smithers with him. It has the little mausoleum with Smithers underneath, like I don't know. That just popped in my mind.
I mean, I have to bring this part up too, because when we see that the main musician, what was the main musician's name?
De La Cruz.
De La Cruz. In the real world, he dies by getting hit by a bell, and then later on, he dies the same way, technically. Yeah. By getting hit by this bell. And man, there's also what is it? Hito Bashura, I think, is the Japanese butchered term, but this is also translated to the human pillar. And this is when you bury a person under a building or under a bridge, or in Japanese and Korean culture, melt their body into the metal that goes into a bell so that it can ring, and that they use these bodies that are stored in the bridges and in the foundations of buildings to act as the protector of other spirits. So not only when you're building out real estate, you got to protect it with cameras and like fences and everything from the normal people, but you also have to have like a supernatural security package, I guess. And that's this version of this.
They are fine if you just build a shrine at the end of the bridge now, but
so they say.
So they say. Who knows what goes on in the dark recesses of the whatever. Okay. Let's see. Anyway, I guess I've pretty much got, I think we've mostly gone over my weird metaphysical discomfort with this film.
That was it? I was expecting something way worse than that.
Oh no,
You
I'm
just,
not.
you just don't like that there's a TSA in the afterworld, it sounds like.
Oh, the security screen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What are you
yeah.
trying to smuggle into the afterworld, Matt? That this is upsetting you so much.
Apparently guitars.
Okay.
Which I get you can't. That is, I'm like, hey, I wouldn't have to worry about finding guitars. Like, oh, but if I'm in the Coco Afterlife, I guess I would have to go hustling for a guitar, because you can't take it with you, right?
Well, I mean, maybe you can, because in this one they kind of do imply that he gets to bring the guitar with him, though.
Oh, I assumed he just had a different one. I don't know. I have copies of guitars here, so
It's like a spirit guitar. There was also another cool little learning thing in this movie that I was starting to break down, but he's telling, I think it's Hector is telling Miguel about a grito, which is sort of this yell that has some extra story behind it. The closest one I can think of is that there is an Apache yell. There's also a Mormon version called, I think, like the Hosanna cry. And then there's also in the Civil War, the Confederates had something called the Confederate yell, I think. Yeah. And that all three of these are supposed to not just invoke fear in whoever you're facing off against, but it's supposed to just like give you a straight up adrenaline rush so that everyone on the front line, they get this weird boost, and it lets them go forward. And in this movie, they're teaching Miguel how to do this grito yell. And I was looking into the history of this too, and even though this predates, I mean, people have been yelling since forever, right? Since before language probably existed. But there was specifically in 1810, this was yelled out by a guy named Miguel Hidalgo, and it was called the Cry of Dolores. And this was part of the Independence War. So I just thought it was a cool connection that he's teaching Miguel, and the most famous grito by someone named Miguel was actually dated to this September 1810 war.
Wow, that's good.
Of course, they mastered that earlier with the Aztec death whistle, didn't they? I mean, a bunch of rednecks screaming on a hill. I'm sorry, I'm from Georgia, so I'm thinking of the Confederate you just said. But a bunch of rednecks screaming on a hill versus a bunch of people with Aztec death whistles. Have you heard those things?
Yeah,
I feel like we need one.
Yeah. Instead of having like an air horn, you got your death whistle. It sounds like insane screaming. It's great. So, that should terrify anyone more than just a bunch of people doing their this other screaming.
There's another American source of this too, from like the rebel yell, because the rebel yell, they kind of borrowed it from Mexico / the Aztecs, the Apaches, but also I guess
Billy Idol.
And technically Billy Idol song Rebel Yell was based on a whiskey, but the whiskey itself was based on the real Rebel Yell. So in a way, like, he was singing about the Rebel Yell. But the Rebel Yell also came from the Scots and the Irish, and they brought a similar yell into their culture, into like the Appalachians. So
freedom.
I just love the idea of this this yell that has all sorts of properties. Like, it can actually change your mentality and your physicality by just shouting it out the right time.
Well, I think you said not Doom, but Dune, the book thing, because they have the voice where, these caught ladies are able to modulate their voice to make you do certain things. So, of course, in the movies, they put weird filters and crap on it. But the idea is just they know how to change their voice to convince people to do things, which is kind of like a quieter version of that.
All right, I'm ready for my darkest note on this entire movie.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
And that's that towards the end, Miguel, he thinks his great-grandpa throws him off this cliff into sort of like a little cave that has like some water in it. And man, wouldn't you know that last year I was just doing a whole bunch of research into sites that had been recently discovered in Mexico and in Central America. And there's a place called the Cave of Screams, or the Cave of Terror, that is in Central America, where it basically children from all over Mexico and Central and South America were all brought to this one point and thrown off of this cliff into this cave, because they found hundreds of bones. And we're talking like infants up to like ages 5 and 7. And this was part of like a transnational like sacrificial ritual that they would do every single year. And they also found blue paint on some of the bones, which indicated not just Aztec influence, but Mayan influence, because the Mayans would use this special blue pigment in order to denote something as being like a sacrifice to the gods. So as soon as he throws Miguel off this cliff, literally into a spot that looks just like this cave of terror, it was the only thing that I could think of. I don't know if that was on their mind, but
I think it was. If Disney does this 1 year later in Avengers Infinity War, where the same thing happens. I don't know if the visuals are quite as side by side, but I'm like, oh, again, we have, father throwing daughter off of a cliff for sacrificial reasons.
It happens. I mean,
what happened in 2017 and 2018 in Disney movies. So that's kind of fascinating.
Another thing that I remember is when De La Cruz near the end, if I remember, he throws Miguel off of the near the concert. He throws him off the ledge and tries to kill him.
Right, and that's when his dog swoops in and saves him at like the very last second.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the great grandma's spirit animal that ends up saving him.
Just off the top of my memory, I think the main 3 Disney films that I could think of where the villain genuinely tries to murder the protagonist, I would say, is Up.
Right.
Up. I just had him on my head too. Up, Toy Story 3, and because he tries to incinerate them at the end, and then
it's technically negligence, but yeah, we'll call that murder. Why not?
And then, Coco. I know there's other Disney films that happen, but just from my experience growing up, those were the 3 main ones I could think of where I'm like, wow, they genuinely try to kill him at the end.
Fox and the Hound's a real obvious one. They're just trying to shoot him.
I knew I was forgetting some, but yeah.
And then Snow White, because the stepmother tries to poison her. The Wicked Witch tries to poison her.
That's true.
Well, I think you could do it in lots of ways, but maybe what you're getting at is the non-transformed murder. And Up, it's just the guy we've been seeing the whole movie tries to murder. And Aladdin, Jafar has to become a big crazy beast when he tries to kill Aladdin.
Yeah.
And Snow White, she's got to become the old crone to try to kill Snow White. So they have to transform into something else to kill someone. Where I guess you could, well, in Coco, though, De La Cruz, he is transformed, but not in terms of this narrative, right? The De La Cruz we meet speaking and interacting is already the bone one, so he's technically not.
Yeah, it was like and I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure there's other definitely Disney film examples where that happens, but I just remember watching these and thinking, wow, it felt like even if they're animated films, it felt really human. I was like, wow, it felt like just straight up, like, oh, I'm gonna kill you, like just straight up, like. And that always, I got that feeling from the end of this film when I first saw it in the theaters. I'm like, wow, De La Cruz just straight up wants to kill the kid, That is interesting. It seems more hardcore when you don't change the character, right? So when you change, it's like, well, here's something else trying to kill it, even though it's technically the same thing. But it does feel more visceral when it's just like, yeah, I've been watching this guy for the past 40, 50 minutes, and now he's trying to commit murder. Lotso's still just a fuzzy bear when he does that. Yeah, when I first saw and then I didn't think before the Hector reveal that if I remember, he kills Hector, right?
Yeah.
That's how Hector
poisons him.
Yeah.
Poisons him, right. So
Hector just doesn't figure it out until that
later.
point. Like he's been in the afterlife for a century, thinking he just suddenly died.
Yeah, and from the reveal, before that reveal, I remember thinking, oh, De La Cruz, there's something shady about him. He's just going to be a shady character. But after that reveal, to me, he upgraded to monster level. I was like, wow, this dude's a monster. This dude's like a piece of crap,
Well, plus the most evil thing about De La Cruz, I think, is that he transitions into the afterlife and still doesn't transition from his personality. He's still the horrible person that he was in life. And he continues that over. Whereas you see pretty much everyone else in this afterlife has maybe changed for the better of it. They all seem somewhat altruistic. None of them seem like they're trying to screw anyone else over. Although maybe the security guards at the concert, maybe they got like some dirt. They kind of probably came from Vegas or something. But I think that adds that like a villain quality to De La Cruz, that he went through all this. And when he first throws Miguel, I believe he's still under the impression that Miguel is his great-great-grandson. And Miguel thinks that too, and he's like, how could you do this to me? And he says, well, I killed my best friend. So it was his way of saying that he would do anything in order to make in the music business. And I felt like this might be a deep cut, man. This reminded me of the Prince Paul album, Prince Among Thieves, where his best friend ends up sacrificing him in order to get like this Wu-Tang deal or something. So that's all I was thinking. Because again, it's a musical sort of presentation about betrayal and stealing you over music.
Yeah. It's also when does your reputation sour? And sorry for a spoil. I might spoil here. Have you guys watched 28 Years Later yet? The news.
I have. We both have. Yeah.
Okay, you know the ending, right? Where because 2001 is the point where society falls apart in Britain, we still venerate certain people who we might not actually venerate in 2025, right? For the end.
Do you see like the Queen on the wall in one of the scenes?
I'm talking about the last scene where the Savile crowd shows up.
With Jimmy Savile, yeah.
yeah. And they're like, we're the Jimmies or whatever, you know? It's like, oh.
And I didn't honestly, I knew because I didn't love the ending. I hated the ending, just how in your face they appeared and they're jumping and doing parkour off of the wall. Like, I didn't dig that. But I didn't know until after my viewing that he had the Jimmy Savile look. And I was aware of Jimmy Savile, but I didn't connect the two. And then after, I'm going on X and Twitter and everybody's tearing him to Danny Boyle to pieces. Yo, why would you put a Jimmy Savile figure in the film? I'm like, where? And I replaying it in my head. And then the look, the hair, the blonde hair, just the appearance of him. I thought it was a very weird choice after.
Very weird choice.
Yes,
you
really
kind of appreciate it. But just an interesting thing, like, oh, because their history ended in 2001, this guy's still okay. So I don't know. I don't really know where I'm implying that to De La Cruz, but it's just it popped in my head. So because this before that, again, Miguel is modeling himself after De La Cruz. You know, that's who he wants to be until he doesn't.
Yeah.
I do like to imagine a British version of Coco with the Fab Five or Fab Four and Jimmy Savile as De La Cruz somehow. I feel like that movie could work.
That'd be a messed up one.
If anyone's got like a whole bunch of extra time in VO3 credits, just make that an AI for us, please.
I still need to watch Better Man. That's the Robbie Williams stories, but Robbie Williams is a monkey, right?
Yeah, he's a chimp. Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, sorry. In Planet of the Apes rules, you don't call chimps monkeys.
Oh no, you call monkey is just that. You know, yeah.
I just did a podcast on Planet of the Apes, so it was a recurring joke.
I heard a couple of my buddies who saw that adored it. They really loved it, and I'm not the biggest Robbie Williams fan, so I was kind of staying away from that one. But even some of my friends were like, "No, check it out. It's a good one." I'm like, "Really? The biopic about the monkey that's like it's his life, but it's presented through a monkey?" I wasn't sure, but I'm hearing good things about it.
That's right. If you make weird choices like that, and now people are saying it's good, I'm like, is that something special? Again, I haven't seen it yet either. So on my to-do list. So.
It's got to be better than that Sia movie.
And we're also in the land of reboots, remakes, sequels, requels, and prequels. We're also in the land of that. So when a movie that's like not a remake or something comes out, even if it's great or bad, people recept it more easier because there's not too many original films as compared to the other ones, or compared to the constant rehash of remakes.
I almost like, what would we call, it's not a requel or a sequel, but the whole premise of Coco coming out after, what was the other name of the movie that was like
The Book of Life.
Book of Life. And the same thing with Ants and Bugs Life. And then I guess, the examples of Snakes on a Train and Snakes on a Plane kind of come out. Like, it kind of feels that those are related in the same way that like a requel or like a remake would be, like a reboot.
Well, Snakes on a Train was the mockbuster in that case. It was just copying. That's when you just directly copy. But yeah, like you're mentioning the Ants, the Bugs Life, and that's the weird thing. I guess Book and Life of Coco. It is kind of funny though that it's just kind of like, let's kind of steal this movie's vibe a little bit 3 years later and make a movie where a guy's stealing somebody's art. It's like,
That's very ironic.
If they drum up a new audience and now all of a sudden people are really vibing with like, for someone that was unfamiliar with the cultural aspects of Day of the Dead and the ofrendas and the spirit animals, once that gets brought into the zeitgeist, I could see Disney and other corporations just thinking like, oh yeah, we can milk that a little bit too. Now that it's like nice and fresh and everything, might as well hit it now, because if we try and come back in 5 or 10 years, then it's just going to remind people of the thing that they remember that was slightly better than that. But if it's within like a few years, then they can kind of capitalize on, like a fresh wound almost.
okay, I guess they were kind of planning on this. I'm now reading a paragraph off Wiki, by the way, but in 2013, Disney requested to trademark the phrase Dia de los Muertos for merchandising applications. This was met with criticism from the Mexican-American community in the United States. Lalo Alcaraz, a Mexican-American cartoonist, drew a film poster titled Muerto Mouse, depicting a skeletal Godzilla-sized Mickey Mouse with the byline "It's coming to trademark your cultura." More than 21,000 people signed a petition on change.org stating that the trademark was a cultural appropriation and exploitation at its worst. A week later, Disney canceled the attempt with the official statement saying that the trademark filing was intended to protect any title for our film and related activities. It has since been determined that the title of the film will change, and therefore we are withdrawing our trademark filing. So yeah, they stepped in on that, didn't they? And they deserve to have people scream at them for that.
This is what Disney does, though, man. Disney, they own things that you shouldn't be able to own. For example, almost every one of their major theatrical releases, at least before Pixar and the 3D ones, was about trademarking stories that had been in the public domain for sometimes hundreds or even thousands of years.
Wow.
And now we got Disney, for example, trademarking the word Frozen. Like that,
Yeah.
what a common word, but there's that nefarious aspect too, that they're trying to create Frozen so that you can't Google Walt Disney Frozen and get anything about his frozen head or his frozen body.
Oh, wow.
And that and it was like intentionally done. So them trying to trademark Dia de los Muertos also feels like it tracks directly with all kinds of things that Disney's trying to do.
They
They're
got
trying
to
to
change the
own our
names though.
language.
It was the ice cream. I guess I'm hungry. The Ice Queen, right? That was the story. Now it's Frozen. Now we all know it's Frozen. We know she's Elsa. We know she's got a sister Anna. It was the Frog Prince. Now it's Princess and the Frog, isn't it? Like, I mean, it's a change in name, but now it's Disney's name.
That's a trip.
So I bring this up too, like Pinocchio, which we mentioned earlier, has been done by so many people. This is one that wasn't even Grimm's fairy tales. This was like a political Italian story that originally was about some real topics. But if you were to say Pinocchio in the presence of pretty much anyone alive that knows what that is, they're going to think of the Disney proprietary trademarked image of Pinocchio. And that's kind of been their plan all along, is to own words and own characteristics and archetypes in a way that no one's ever tried to before. And they've been getting away with it for over a century now.
I guess Aladdin's where they really start figuring it out. Before that, it's always like pretty much like the name of the story is the name of the movie, right? Aladdin's a story, kind of a story from 1001 Nights or whatever, right? And not quite, but so
not
now
to mention that Aladdin was Chinese, and now we see like a Saudi Arabian sort of Aladdin versus the original Chinese version.
The Lion King's, when you think about it, I mean, now it's Disney, of course, but it's a generic title when you just, take it out of context. And then Pocahontas, Tarzan, Hercules, they're not changing the names much. When they start doing their boys' adventure thing, Treasure Planet, okay, we're starting to change a little bit. That's distinctly Disney. Atlantis, I know that's near here or there. But yeah, yes, since in the past 15 years, like any old property they use, they definitely rebrand it so they can just own that.
Hercules, by the way, the other Disney movie about going into the afterlife, I believe. I can't think of many other ones.
Right. Yeah, that one slipped off my head too. But you're right, Hercules, because of Hades and all that. Yep.
Yeah, that's physically underground in that case, right? Coco does seem to be in some metaphysical realm, some other dimension, I guess. Hence the bridges.
Yeah.
What was that Disney Exorcist movie, the live action one, Matt?
The Watcher in the Woods.
The Watcher in the Woods. Also, I mean, although we don't get to see a main character experiencing the afterlife, there clearly is this other dimension where they're like dead for a short period of time and then they come back.
The Watcher in the Woods. I've never seen that one.
You probably don't have to. We watch the deleted scene as I believe is our recommendation.
You gotta just watch the deleted scene first, which is better than anything that made the actual movie. But it was,
wow.
I think that was Disney's Exorcist, right? Exorcist got real hot, and they were like, "We need something like that, but for kids."
Well, it took them 8 years or something like that, but sure. Sometimes Disney does drag. I mean, you go in and to the parks and you're still hearing the hits of 2007. You know.
So another note on Coco here is I just thought this was also interesting that they're not allowed to play. Miguel's not allowed to play music. Music is completely banned. And instead, the family takes up being cobblers or making shoes for people. And one of the last movies that we were looking into, I was looking at some of the backstory, and I think one of the legends that it was based on was this legend called the Curse of the Three Heads. And the Curse of the Three Heads, long story short, someone offends these three oracular heads that are in a well, and they basically say, "Your curse, now your husband is going to be a cobbler." So one of the worst medieval curses is that you're just going to make shoes for the rest of your life. So it almost seems that Miguel's family, like the entire line, they've been cursed since day one because the mom decides she's going to end up making shoes. And I guess making shoes is the worst possible profession in some of these beliefs. And the question that I had in my mind was, and I think I already know the three of us would answer, but if you could only choose either shoes or music, like you're never allowed to wear shoes for the rest of your life, or you're never allowed to hear music. I guess everyone's going with music and screw the shoes, right?
Yeah. And I can't. What about sandals? Are sandals still allowed?
I think no sandals, no.
I was
going to ask that, Matt. I was going to ask that.
I guess after a few weeks, you can toughen up the bottoms of your feet. We used to do that back in the day, right? The 10,000, or maybe we didn't. Maybe we all walked on clouds in Atlantis.
Yeah, we could go old school and we could figure out something to wear as shoes, I think. But if we had no music in the world at all, I think a lot of people would go crazy, myself included.
I wonder if that's even practical. Like, how do you impose no? I guess with Miguel, he's not allowed to play music and he's not allowed to pursue a career in music. But you can't just straight block music from someone. I mean, if I hear a leaky faucet, at a certain point, my head turns it into like BPMs and melodies, and like that leaky faucet becomes a beat somewhere after I've heard it long enough. Even just like annoying noise, like a car alarm that like won't shut up after an hour of going off in the night, like it turns into music a little bit. Otherwise, it drives you crazy, right? But you can prevent someone from wearing shoes.
Right. I feel, music is almost like I would call it like the healthiest drug. It's something that's very addicting. It's something that won't leave the veins, it won't leave the system. And even if you quit it, or it's maybe a little bit harder, because even if you quit it, it's still in your blood somehow. If you're a musical artist, or if you enjoy music as a listener, it's automatic. It's like we have no choice but to seek out and find some sort of music that we can enjoy or create. It's as a creative, as somebody who creates music, I can never see myself putting down the pen and just giving up, even if it was a hobby or a side thing. Like if I just cold turkeyed it, I can't see that.
No, I've always been, again, it might be because I'm creative minded, but just when someone says like, "Oh, I stopped playing guitar," it's like, how? It doesn't compute to me. Yeah.
And I can understand when people when things get a bit tough, or when they're like, it's just not working for me. But even so, if you're not pursuing it as a career, you can't put it down completely, because it's in your blood. It's you. It's like you programmed yourself to create with that. And
that said, as I'm getting older and I've been playing music too long, and I'm like, I think I don't play the drums anymore. My hands are not going to be able to handle that anymore. So
true.
But yeah, so there's physical things, but yeah.
Yeah, it's almost, it reminds me of some of the boxers who go through really, like tough illnesses, or even like let's say like Ali with the Parkinson's. It was breaking down his body near the end, but he still there were still little tiny examples of like memory reflexes, or like it's just it doesn't leave, even if it breaks you down, mentally. There's that little spark in there that's like it's like a seed. You just keep watering it.
Well, and plus, I mean, even through dementia, because and in this movie, they show that Mama Coco, once Miguel starts playing Remember Me,
right,
she remembers this is that song that my dad used to play. And then it brings back all these memories. And that's what ends up saving Hector in the very end. And this is very true. One of the only treatments known that doesn't involve all kinds of crazy pharmaceuticals for dementia patients is that if you play music that they liked when they were younger,
right,
it will snap them, like it'll snap their mind into a cognitive state again for, fleeting moments. And it's wild that music alone has that ability. And in this movie, it adds this extra, maybe like a dark layer of depth, but that the fact that they banned music was actually keeping Hector, from ever visiting back. They were killing him. They were enforcing the second death, but it's also keeping Mama Coco in this dementia state. If he had been allowed to play music the entire time, then she would be reconnecting with the world and she might actually be recognizing her own relatives. So the fact that this like ultimate curse had been put all the way down, I think it also shows how long a Latina can hold a grudge. I think that was like another one of the backstories of this movie.
She wanted nothing to do with them. She was like, "Oh, you scumbag! You left the family." She wanted nothing. Like even he was trying to make it work, and she was still like, "Nope."
Not even the great-great-grandson gets any sympathy out of this. Like that's how bad the grudge goes, right?
This is kind of interesting. It says in an earlier version of the script, his family would have been cursed with singing when trying to speak. I don't know if that would have been better or worse. Star Trek kind of did that in a recent episode. So they say, of course, it's science. So it's like the nebula is making them sing or something. But yeah, the family, they hate music, but they have to sing now. That could have been fun, maybe, or annoying. I'm not sure. It's one of those two. A little both, maybe.
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of musicals, and a forced musical doesn't sound like you're forcing me to listen to it, and then you're also seem like you're being forced to sing it. Neither one of us want to participate in this.
Okay, don't watch a Star Trek episode. They're like having a conversation while walking down the hall, and it's like, then we start doing this. Uh-oh, it seems we're going to sing now. We're stuck singing. I mean, it's funny, but yeah, that sounds like exactly what you don't want. I like that one, but yeah, it's not what you want, maybe.
I guess my other main note on here, and another maybe slightly morbid, but that dementia is really the curse that this family goes through, right? Because that's a strong genetic pass down. So the chance of you having dementia in your family skyrockets based on whether or not your, I think, grandparents or great-great-grandparents have it. So in addition to Miguel having a curse from being a grave robber and disturbing the dead on Dia de los Muertos, they actually have a legitimate curse, and that curse is the exact one that ends up almost killing Hector. But you could imagine that within that family line, they're going to continuously go through this exact same issue, and music is maybe the only saving grace, is the only thing that's going to prevent them from dying an early second death because of that dementia.
Yeah.
This family sucks.
Yeah, I can I never thought of it that way, but I can definitely see it being the main barrier or the main forefront of how things start crumbling in that family,
I mean, crumbling your family is curb stomping your grandson's guitar for no particular reason. I mean, that's not anyway, even with a grudge, that's insane behavior. So
true.
Yeah, that was rough, man. Like the grandma comes across as the villain to me at the very beginning of this movie. She's the most evil thing that you see until you realize at the very end that De La Cruz poisoned his best friend, is willing to kill his alleged great-great-grandson. Before that, she is the enemy of this entire movie.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's the main. She's pretty much the main reason why he runs away from the family.
Now, the director stated, and we've been through lots of these movies, and like we've had things where the director's like, this movie was highly influenced by Looney Tunes. I'm like, what? It doesn't make sense. So in this one, he was saying, we've done all the Ghibli's now, and the director is specifically saying like, oh, Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away were like influences on this film, which so I'm trying to figure out what he's saying. I guess there's lots of crazy lights in the afterlife, like Spirited Away or whatever. But I was like, oh, is Coco kind of the grandma figure that we found in all those animes, you know?
Well, with also Spirited Away, if I'm correct, the main character has like her own kind of like Alabrija or like kind of character or creature that she's with, right?
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
There's always this grandma character in the Japanese ones. I was kind of wondering if that's kind of the influence that they're talking about here, or if you saw something else, because they distinctly were like, oh, we were thinking of Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away. So you might have hit the nail on one of those heads there, but
that was the main thing that I can think of. Just the creature or the flying creature that she's with, pretty much almost the whole movie from what I remember. And that I can see the Alabrija or that being a big
mangy dogs turning into magical creatures. That's a little bit like the dude in Spirited Away that turns into a beat up dragon and then a majestic dragon.
Yeah, I was wondering too, how do you get a badass Alabrija in the afterlife? Because the kid, I understand Miguel, he's got like his dog that turns into like a magical dog a little bit, but it's still kind of a derpy dog. Meanwhile, great grandma has this badass chimera that has like a panther body and like huge wings, and it's 20 times the size of anyone else. How do I get that in the afterlife? You got to upgrade, you got to like train your Pokemon and like beat other spirit animals, and like they get bigger and bigger. Do you trade them in? Like, because it seems unlikely that you just die and you immediately just randomly get assigned the most badass spirit animal.
Okay. You made me think a little bit of the Twilight Zone episode. I think it's The Hunt, where the hunter and his dog like fall in the water and die or whatever. So he's walking along and he comes to one thing and they're like, okay, this is the entrance to heaven, but your dog can't come in. It's people heaven. And he refuses to go. So of course that was the test. That's the entrance to hell. The actual entrance to heaven, of course, will allow him to bring his dog.
He didn't know the secret, man. You just got to say that it's your emotional support dog, and they let him right in. That's like they have to.
He still would have been in hell if they listened to him. He'd still be in hell. It worked out for him. This is the Twilight Zone where it worked out for him. Except for the dying at the beginning part.
What do you guys think about the new Twilight Zone that they're working on right now?
Is there a newer one?
Yeah, Ben Stiller is going to direct some of the episodes from my understanding.
Okay, you're enlightening a Twilight Zone podcaster to that. So, because we just did the original. We're doing a few Rod Serling movies. We're going to do the Peel one next. We're doing a weird spiral through time. So next is Peel, and then it's going to be back to Night Gallery, and then to the Forrest Whitaker one, and then in the center is the '80s one. So
I remember hating the Peel one. I only saw a couple episodes, and I kind of clocked out. I was like, nah, it's not working for me.
Well, there's only 20, so
I think it was like the remake of the Nightmare at the 30,000
with Adam Scott. Yeah.
I like Adam Scott, but I didn't like the episode. I was like, just not. It was like I thought it was a cheap attempt at a remake of a classic episode.
And the movie segment, that's good. That's not a good one to choose to remake, really.
The movie's really.
I think I'm for any new Twilight or a zone. Any new Twilight Zone.
How about Twilight? You're down for a new Twilight?
I recently realized that Twilight was written by a Mormon, and that Mormons and vampires both have this weird obsession with forever looking young and having this clean cut kind of like appearance. So like now I like Twilight, I think, because now it's about Mormon vampires.
I never saw Twilight until like 2 years ago or something, like pretty recently. And I saw it on the TV downstairs. It's right when they got the new TV. So, but they don't have the 4K player. So when you play media on there, it has that weird soap opera look, right? So
that's the glimmer. I think that's what they call that.
Okay, so I got the Twilight. I watched Twilight with a glimmer, which
you've been glimmering. Yes,
was probably bad. Dude.
You're Mormon now. That's how that works.
I'm Mormon now. Japanese Mormon. And they like to mix religions in Japan. You could probably do that. Does anyone got some more hot takes on Coco before we wrap it up?
I think you were the source of the hot takes on this one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my hot take is it's a good movie, but it doesn't sit well with me. It's like, Thursdays, I have to work in Nagano City, which is the one day a week I work at the main school. And that doesn't make sense to everyone. But there's a pizza place nearby. It's a New York style pizza. It's authentic. And I go there before work a lot. And I know this is going to give me mild indigestion. That's just going to happen. It's like authentic New York pizza is going to give you a little indigestion, which in Japan, most food doesn't. So I did it yesterday. I go to work 30 minutes later, like, it wasn't bad, but I'm like, okay, yep. There's the pizza effect. It's coming through. I can go many other places and eat pizzas that will not give me indigestion, but they're not greasy New York style, Yeah,
what you're talking about is senses that go beyond just your palate, right? It goes beyond taste. Like you actually feel it in your body. Maybe in painful ways, but it's part of it.
And what I'm feeling in Coco is giving me like, psychic indigestion a little bit. So.
Okay. That's a great comparison. No, that's a great comparison. No, honestly, there are a couple films that are very, well loved, people adore and worship. And me, honestly, I can recognize it as a good film, but it just doesn't work for me, or it doesn't sit well with me, just how it's made or how it's created. Honestly, this is a hot take, but I'm not the biggest fan of Titanic. And that's because, and people call me crazy. I can see if this is messed up. I enjoy Titanic when the ship is going down. I enjoy it when it's actually popping off. But I have to sit through a 1 hour and a half love story before I get to that other 1 hour and a half.
So it's a 3-hour movie. That's the problem, right?
Yeah. So I feel like if they scaled that love story back to a good 30 or 40 minutes instead of an hour and a half, I felt like I might have enjoyed it more. But it just didn't gel well with me and people around me. I can see why people adore it and love it. It's a well-made film, but there's decisions in it where I'm like, nah, I'm not sitting with that. So I can feel it. I can understand that.
I just went to see a new Mission Impossible, which I enjoyed, but I was like, it's 3 hours long, and they easily could have just cut the first hour out and made it a 2-hour movie, and it would have been fine. Like, honestly, if I watch it next time, maybe I'll just start at an hour in,
Yeah,
and I do Rames that way, but
it's also an art too to pacing. I think pacing is an art of itself, and to keep the viewer interested. If we're watching a 3-hour movie, it has to feel like 2 hours. It has to feel fast. That pacing has to go lightning speed, or at least give us some really cool stuff, some great acting, or just something we could bite. But if it's just there's a couple 3-hour films I see where they're just dragging, and I'm like, I can't do it. I'm trying, but as we get a little bit older, it's I can't do it. I can't do it as much anymore.
Yeah, I used to look at a 3-hour movie and like, man, look at all that value I'm getting out of like this $4
That's
rental.
how Bollywood looks at it.
Movie ticket. And now it's like, man, can this be over in like 40 minutes?
You're kind of checking your watch. You're like, oh man.
I gotta just because you guys mentioned Titanic and Mission Impossible, I gotta just inject a little conspiracy here. So Titanic movie, my biggest complaint is that they don't focus on JP Morgan's insurance scandal and smelting gold to fund the Federal Reserve and all the other.
Since I saw the movie,
so I hope eventually there's like a sequel where they just focus on the JP Morgan conspiracy of it. And Mission Impossible, this is gonna be wild, man. If you go back and watch the very first Mission Impossible movie, the timestamp, bear with me a little bit. The very beginning of the movie, they're showing a recording of inside this party, and it's basically some kind of blackmail that's going down. The timestamp is the exact date in which Scientology lost an important court case about keeping their information out of the public domain. Someone had like leaked their information online, and they were trying to sue them and suppress all this. And I personally think that the entire Mission Impossible series, starring Tom Cruise, by the way, is about Operation Snow White, to bring it to Occult Disney, in where this is the largest domestic espionage in which someone infiltrated the U.S. government, is when the Scientology infiltrated the U.S. Files, and I think they stole a whole bunch of files from the CIA. And my belief is that the Mission Impossible series is Tom Cruise and Scientology showing like, here's the information that we stole from the CIA. We're going to let know all these secret programs and all their different tactics and the different inventions and like the connections that they use. This was their way of doing like a soft reveal, and it was a tit for tat because again, that time code shows when the government said that Scientology was not going to be protected. So they're like, well, screw you. Here's what we got on you. So there you go. Fun fact about Scientology and the CIA today.
Using an established property, right? Because it was a TV show, and I love the
Correct.
TV show, but the TV show and the movies very different vibes. So it's like, let's just use this
True.
as a as our cover. I mean, like literal cover, and window dressing, which I kind of like that though, because fascinating ideas, right?
And I mean, I feel like this is what not only what I feel like tons of films do this. As much as I love film, they're gonna put messages, they're gonna put symbolism, they're gonna put this, they're gonna put it right in our faces, but a lot of us are gonna take it as entertainment value, so we're not gonna think twice about it. And I admit I'm part of that crowd sometimes, where I'm like, hey, I'm just sitting and enjoying the film. But when you really think about it and you go deeper, there's a ton of stuff that they're putting in there that's pretty either right on the nose, or they're secrets. They're secrets that are put out into film.
Well, if this is your profession, this is what you've been doing your entire life, and you're at the pinnacle of making, say, like a Disney movie, that's your canvas. You might not be a painter with an actual canvas in front of you, but if your canvas is writing in some esoteric storylines and bringing up mythology that no one else would, like the child sacrifice angles and the Cave of Terror, if you knew that, this is your only creative outlet in order to express this weird thing that you kind of know. So I do feel that sometimes people are like, oh, you're just reading too much into it. One of the better examples I like to bring up, the old school Disney 2D animations, where someone was literally sitting down and drawing and looking at the same thing thousands and thousands of times for like a month straight, that ends up being a minute or two on film. You can't tell me that they're not knowing exactly what's happening and how important all these little motions are, and sneaking in little poses and little like facial expressions. That's not just accidental. Like you are spending hours and hours of your life into doing that.
And put synchromysticism on top of that, right? So there's also things that are subconscious but still real,
Well, it kind of reminds me of, it might be a little off topic, but it kind of reminds me of how, if I'm correct, James Bond, it was originally written by a CIA agent, or there's involvement from the CIA in the actual scripts.
Well, dude, even better than that. Yeah, Ian Fleming, right? But 007 was also the code name for John Dee, who was the court magician. I can't remember which queen it was, but he was the one that invented Enochian magic with Edward Kelly. So, and his signature, it looked like 007, and it looked like two glasses and kind of like hiding your eyes. That was what the symbol originally stood for.
Oh.
And that's why Ian Fleming was big into occultism, just like any good CIA agent or intelligence agent.
British intelligence, by the way.
British intelligence, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure he's tied up with CIA too, but I mean, that's the thing of the James Bond, right? They always, what's the guy? He's got his counterpart. He's more in the books, but he's in the movies too. I think.
Yeah, it just reminds me of how they put a lot of the stuff that we see, and I never could confirm certain stuff watching Disney films, but I always had a hunch that they were trying to put something in between the lines ever since I was a kid. I would watch a Pixar film and be like, that was weird. And then I would grow up and think, hey, as much as I love Monsters, Inc., they are trying to steal all the energy source from the kids, at the end of the day.
Welcome to the Occult Disney podcast.
Yeah. Let me actually, we didn't even bring up the Disney proxy in this movie. So let me just introduce you to a little theory that we've been working on for the last 2 years. But the Disney proxy basically states that you put your kid, let's say, your 5-year-old kid down in front of a TV and you put on a Disney movie, and then you leave the room to go do taxes or clean or whatever it is. So now this kid that doesn't have a lot of outside experience with the world gets completely engrossed in this film. And let's say that film is Bambi or something. So as the kid is watching Bambi and Bambi's mom dies, that kid is going through the same feelings and emotions as if someone just killed their mom, and they look around and their parent's not there because the parent's in the other room. So now all of a sudden your kid is absolutely filled with despair. It's like, not only did my mom abandon me in this regular life to go in the other room, but now mom is dead. She's gone and has abandoned me forever as far as they're aware. And then the very next thing that you're going to see on the screen is going to be a helpful little sidekick that's like, don't worry, it's all good. I'll take care of you. I'll reunite you with your parents, or I'll show you how this forest works. And that character that gets introduced is going to be on lunch pails and Happy Meal toys and t-shirts. It's going to be a like capitalized commodity that's going to be sold to your kid for the rest of their life. And then when Bambi 2 comes out and they have kids, they're going to be like, oh man, this movie was such a classic. I need to show it to my kids. And it kind of like perpetuates this chain. But the Disney proxy, it's literally a formula of how can we traumatize a child and then immediately save them with some kind of intellectual property that we own and we can make money off of. So I think that that's kind of like the most insidious part of any Disney movie. Like, read in between the lines. The lines are that your parents have abandoned you, kid, but if you go and buy this toy or you go and watch this movie, we'll make you whole again.
Coco, though, Hector doesn't show up on lunchboxes. I guess that's a difference on this one. But they are, trying to own to the iconography of,
They have taken over Mexico and Epcot, though. Like, when you go inside Epcot, the Mexico
pretty big.
Version,
yeah.
It's kind of Coco now.
I haven't been there since 2009. So for me, I was annoyed when they put Donald Duck on the ride, it's fine.
For me, Hector isn't like Hector's pretty big, but he isn't as big as, let's say, like a Olaf the Snowman, or, something like where that motherfucker is everywhere you go, But Hector is, whenever I haven't been to Tijuana or Mexico in a very long time, but if I'm pretty sure if I were to go over there, Hector would probably be everywhere.
Yeah, I guess just from like my point of view, like Japan, I guess probably because of the cultural, ravine, it's just not that popular in Japan. I think people know the movie. They know. Remember Me, like I said, I had 10-year-old Japanese kids made me learn the song, so they know it. But maybe it has a little more cultural tenderhooks, over in North America than here.
Yeah, true.
I mean, they just tried to put Marvel on the ride in the parks, in the Tokyo parks, for the first time this year. So they put Groot in It's a Small World, and that's the first Marvel thing they've had in the parks at all. So
wow,
it was fun though. I was a fan of It's a Small World with Groot. So I guess we'll start wrapping this one up for 2 days then. So hey, Avro, you want to plug away? Yeah, you got something there to plug, yeah?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much drop reviews and reactions on my channel. I try to do every other day. MCing and music is my main forefront under my Afro with the dashes name. But I also I just dropped a new album called Crimson Fury a couple weeks ago. It's where I'm telling a story in a filmmaking aspect where it's a classic 70s assault on precinct 13 action shoot 'em up kind of feel, but also a revenge, break out of prison, kill the guy who killed my best friend kind of feel. So I went with that for this album, and that's on all platforms. And yeah, I'm also just working on a ton of other projects for the year, and it's going to be a pretty busy year as far as musical projects.
And I gotta plug your Fro Thizzle reviews too. We'll put a link in the description and all this. But again, so like much. You go, I don't know if this was intentional from you. I assume it was, but pretty much all the movies you review, you're giving them like 8.8s and 9s and 9.8. So you're only reviewing like really good movies that you end up suggesting that people watch, it seems.
I review a lot of stinkers as well. I have a bad movie little playlist, and that's like The Room, Tommy Wiseau, Knights of the Zodiac, the traditional horrible films. Like I have a nice little playlist as well. Mortal Kombat, Annihilation. I have a couple where I actually started off the channel 4 years ago tearing apart films, and then I wanted to scale it back and be like, you know what, let me show the movies that I really enjoy as well, or like Fro favorites, or movies that I really resonate with, that I grew up and nostalgic ones like Ernest Scared Stupid, or just and I wanted to showcase that like more so love side as well. So I try to balance nowadays. I'll tear apart a movie, but more so nowadays you will see me showing flowers or giving love to a movie that I really enjoy.
Matt, I feel like that's a perfect lead-in for your movie podcast.
I was gonna like try not to add interference and just mention the Twilight Zone one time in a podcast is where we just finished going over the Twilight Zone. So hey, there's a lot of trippy stuff in there. Imprison, and The Prisoner podcast, which is now an The Severed cast, I guess. We're covering the show Severance, starring Adam Scott, just to tie that back in.
Real quick, since you said that, my lady, she's also an artist and I produce. She just dropped a song today called Severance, and it's about the show. We also dropped a video too that we spliced together. It's just clips from the show, but she's rapping about Lumen and the innie and outie, and I produced a song. We just dropped that today. So I just said that because you brought up Severance.
No, that's cool. I mean, it's in the blood right now. Just the reason we were even doing that is just because people kept telling me to watch it, and then people wanted to talk about it. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to do a podcast about it. So it seems to be kind of in everyone's blood right now. So that's just proving the point.
Since you're doing Twilight Zone and Severance, Ben Stiller is, I guess he is appointed to be the director of the new Twilight Zone episodes. So
no, my eyes lit up a little bit when you did that. So I said that the first time because I had not heard.
I'm pretty sure because of Severance, because of the sci-fi aspect and everything. I'm sure they were like, "Yo, let's get him for Twilight Zone."
And that's why I'm doing Severance. I'm like, oh, it kind of follows that thread a little bit. But yeah, hey Thomas, what you got cooking?
So I just finally released the Illuminati comic on paranoidamerican.com. This is a comic book about the Bavarian Illuminati that goes all the way back to their foundings in 1700s, all the way through modern day. We mentioned how like maybe Lady Gaga's in the Illuminati, and it's not that crazy because Mozart, Beethoven, and Bach were literally in the Bavarian Illuminati. They were all connected. Beethoven's piano, violin teacher, and publisher were direct Illuminati members. And in fact, I believe one of them went on to take over the official Illuminati after Adam Weishaupt went into hiding. If you care about any of that stuff, I think we've got the first and only comic book that details their entire history from start to end, all illustrated. It's the equivalent of a full page, like 20-page comic, but it's in a little chick track format. So that one's at illuminaticomic.com, and it'll just bring you to paranoidamerican.com. Pre-sold over 5,000 copies back in December. So all the ones that we've got left over from that initial run are available now. And I'll send you a copy for free, Afro, for hanging out with us. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you, bro. Absolutely. I'll definitely check it out.
I'm going to draw this circle in a loop, and I guess we'll just end the podcast how we started it. Dear audience, we hope you die soon.
American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all of that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
Explore the unique with Paranoid American sticker sheets. Unearth tales of cryptids, cults, and mysteries through each sticker. These won't last long. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
All American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all of that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
What the heck are you waiting for? Discover the extraordinary with Paranoid American sticker sheets. From cryptids in the night to cults out of sight, each sticker is a unique find. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper, the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees, blow it off in the face. you despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.